Welcome back to Digital Leap, the podcast where we help businesses and societies leap into a digitally superior future. Today we have the privilege of talking to a true pioneer in the tech entrepreneurship field, Hamzah Ansari. Hamzah Ansari is a distinguished faculty member at Brown University School of Engineering, where he has held various roles including lecturer, entrepreneur in residence, and the Interim Director of B-Lab. His academic journey is rooted in a robust technical background with an undergraduate degree in electronics and communications engineering from the University of Nottingham, an MA in digital culture and technology from King's College London, and an SCM in innovation management and entrepreneurship from Brown University. With a diverse academic background, Hamzah bridges educational systems to engage and motivate his students effectively. So Hamzah, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to have you here.
And I'm joined also by my co-host, Omer Chaudhry. So, Hamzah, I want to begin the conversation by asking you a question a bit about your journey and how did you transition from an engineering background to becoming an entrepreneur in the technology sector?
Great. Thank you so much, Faizaan and Omer. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. And, I'm a huge supporter of your work and the Digital Leap podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey, which is very varied. As you pointed out in your in your very kind introduction of me, I trained as an electrical engineer in the United Kingdom, and I went through this how you have these moments of realization in your life where you sort of know what you want to do and you also know what you don't want to do. So I was in my second year, and I was in a lab where I was holding a soldering iron in one hand and a printed circuit board in another. Wow. And I looked at it and I said, what am I doing? And it's at that point I realized that the one thing I did not want to do was to be an electrical or communications engineer. And at that point I started sort of looking for other things to do, which would allow me to sort of certainly take my engineering knowledge, but apply it in more creative, value-creating kind of ways. And thankfully, my family was very supportive of me pursuing sort of my own path. The challenge is that in the British system, which is very different than what we have here, you typically don't have the ability to chart your own course when it comes to academic inquiry. So I finished up my degree. I got a master's in the humanities, King's College in London. And at that point, I had the opportunity to come to Brown and further my educational journey and study management and entrepreneurship. And I was in a one-year master's here at Brown, which still exists. It's called PRIME, Program in Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship. And PRIME is a one-year master's that is very much geared towards giving engineers the skills they need to identify business opportunities, to grow them, and to basically scale tech-oriented, tech-focused businesses that stem from there. So I did this one-year master's and I graduated in 2009. You guys know what happened in 2009?
What? Please.
Financial crisis, right? Yeah. So graduating in 2009, spring of 2009, not fun. So I like to tell the story to my students as well that I went up to one of my mentors, Professor Danny Warshay, who's still here at Brown. He's the executive director of the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. And I sat down with him and I said, Danny, I don't know what's going on. And he says, why? I says, listen, I'm getting ready to graduate. My parents are going to be here. I want to tell them that I have a job. So Danny sat back and he starts to smile. And I asked him what was funny. And he says, listen, you're an entrepreneur. I said, what does that mean? And he gave me a piece of advice that has stayed with me since then. He says, an entrepreneur is somebody who, if they cannot find a job that they want, they just go out and they create it.
Wow.
And that's sort of what I did. I got together with some friends of mine from Brown and we started a company called AccelReach. We developed corporate health and wellness coaching software. And we ran the business pretty successfully for about 4 years. We were in the health and wellness space. And what I will tell you is that a time of economic uncertainty or recession, which is, sort of the environment that we have around us, is the best time to start something new. is the best time to create something that's innovative, something that addresses an unmet need, something that solves a problem. And if you can figure out a way to do it at scale, you've got a great sustainable business. And that's what we tried to build. So that was sort of my journey. And then I had the distinctive opportunity to return to Brown, and I served as entrepreneur in residence for many years in the School of Engineering, and then eventually I transitioned to faculty. But yeah, that's the long answer to my to your very short question, Faizaan.
Yeah, so Professor, one thing that you spoke about really did stand out, and it was contrary to the normal beliefs, right? You told us that how when things are not moving the way they should be, and how they're usually like unexpected, that is the actual best place where an entrepreneur could come up with their unique problem solving valuable idea and create their own market, create their own future. Could you expand a bit more on this thing, especially because this at times sounds a bit different, right? Because usually we have the notion that, oh, if the economy is booming, if there's a manifold growth, then this is the best time to start a startup. But no, there's something else involved in it as well. So could you expand more on the element that you just spoke about briefly?
Absolutely. So that's a great question, Omer. And I'll actually answer that question by contextualizing what we mean by entrepreneur and entrepreneurship here at Brown. So for us, and all of you as you guys as Brown students, you've probably heard this mantra that entrepreneurs are really at the core problem solvers, right? And Brown students, as Brown students, you are very good at identifying problems, solving them. And Brown students generally see themselves as agents of change in the world around them, which positions them very well to be entrepreneurs. And my definition of entrepreneurship, which is the same as that of many of my peers, certainly our distinguished faculty members here at Brown, is that entrepreneurship is a structured process for solving problems.
Wow, beautiful.
And I catalyze this in my classes by I start my classes basically, so I teach classes in venture creation, and globalization of entrepreneurship. The first thing I tell my students is that I need them to go out and find beautiful and wicked problems to solve. What do I mean by a beautiful problem? It means that it's a problem that exists in the world around them that they feel sufficiently attracted to solve. A wicked problem is one that has many interdependent variables. So I tell them to go out and look for problems and to try and solve them. Find and validate unmet needs in the environment, and try and come up with solutions. Right? You can come up with a pressing solution for a social problem or a societal problem, and you're an entrepreneur. As long as the solution that you create is one that meaningfully addresses the problem, solves that need, and you can do it in a way that you create lasting social change, you're an entrepreneur. And again, the world around us today, as you see it, is full of problems, and it's full of beautiful problems that are just waiting to be solved by entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So you sorry, Faizaan. I cannot resist, because I mean, whenever we're talking about entrepreneurship, whenever we're talking about problem solving, I always get this adrenaline rush, right? So you a reference to the importance of problem solving in entrepreneurship, right? So this basically brings in the human centric element as well, the human centeredness, and it also talks about the importance of soft skills like empathy, like empathizing with the end user, with the human being. So could you tell us more about these soft skills and how important they are for a technopreneur or for any other entrepreneur per se?
So, great questions. And one of the things that Brown students always do is they ask great questions.
And we have great responses as well from professors like Mr. Hamzah Ansari.
Well, that's what, it's working with intelligent people like you that ask great questions that make my job worth it. So, Omer, you referred to sort of the Stanford design thinking philosophy in starting, building and scaling sustainable businesses, exactly. Right? The first step of the design thinking process is empathy. What do you mean by that? As an entrepreneur, your job is to firstly develop create empathy for the people that you're solving for. So thinking of the people that have a problem that you're trying to address, thinking of the folks that face in their daily lives a challenge that you want to solve for them, with the view of creating a scalable and a sustainable business around it. So how do you create empathy? How do you develop empathy? Well, first of all, it involves having a very good understanding of your customer. What makes them tick? Why do they have this problem? Why do they have this challenge? Why is there an unmet need over here? I also like to tell my students that they need to celebrate the challenges, and by that I mean don't pass judgment, but try and walk a mile in your customer's shoe. Try and understand why they have this, because the best customer is somebody who has a problem, knows they have a problem, and they've tried some sort of homebrew method to solve that problem, right? If they do that, then that means that the challenge that they're facing is credible enough, and the need for a solution that is scalable is measurable enough, right? But in order for you to go out and create such a solution, you've got to first create empathy, develop empathy, understand your customer. Why are they having this? Sometimes you can do that through observational research, by observing your customers and thinking about how they're interacting and engaging with the environment around them through a human-centered design process, right? And interviewing is one, observational is another. Immersing yourself. So trying to, like I said, walk a mile in the shoes. The best, sometimes, it's said that the best businesses are the ones that solve your own problems. I would say not necessarily. The best businesses are the ones that solve anybody's problem. Wow. And like I said, the first thing to do is to create empathy, because without that, you cannot create a credible solution.
Sorry, Faizaan, I have another question.
No, I know. Please.
Yeah. So you spoke about, we're talking a lot about problem solving. We're talking a lot about needs. But at the end of the day, there's always this target market, this beachhead market, who usually has similar kind of needs. And you, as an entrepreneur, are a superhero because you have the solution to their needs, right? So could you expand more on the topic of beachhead market and like the target market, and why is it important? Because I know you personally as well, and I'm inspired by you as well. And there's one thing that you spoke about, that first pin it and then scale it, right? And then you were primarily expressing the importance of a target market and how important it is to first pin it and identifying who your target and identify who your target audience is, who your target customer is. So could you tell us more about that beachhead market, that target market?
Sure, I'll do that, but I'll first challenge something that you just said. May I?
Sure.
You referred to the entrepreneur as a hero.
A superhero, for sure.
Or a superhero. I don't think an entrepreneur is a superhero.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Right? I think an entrepreneur is a change maker.
But superheroes are change makers.
Not always. Sometimes superheroes come in with their own biases. They bring their own prejudices to the table, and they'll come in and sort of try and contextualize as, well, I know what's best for you mentality. I think an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, is really one that, and I keep going back to being an agent of change. So I would say an entrepreneur is an ally and not a hero.
Wow.
Beautiful. And
because it stemmed from the human beings, it stemmed from the end user, right? He doesn't really come up with his own solution developed in a bubble. It's like stemming out from the end user.
Absolutely. Be an ally and not a hero. Because if you're an ally, once again, you're more effectively able to create this empathy and understand the customer needs and create a solution that sustainably and scalably, I did not use the word profitably as yet, sustainably and scalably addresses that need. So let's think about this. As we talk about target markets, beach, you probably heard terms like beachhead market and expansion market, or blue ocean and red ocean. They really just mean the same thing, right? So if you can identify an unmet need and you can validate it clearly, and you feel that there's a group of people or a person or an individual or an archetype of individual that has that problem, that's when your entrepreneurial gumption kicks in, and you can start asking questions like, well, if this problem exists here, Would it exist, you know, for if it exists for one person, would it exist with, with 50, with 100, with 500? And the way we do that is through a process called bottom-up research, right? So we talk to not one, we talk to 50. If you develop a consumer product, you need to speak to like 500 people to get an idea of their need. Once you validate that need, you augment that with top-down research that sort of thinks about strategic megatrends, propensity of certain groups of people to have certain types of problems, to buy certain types of products. But your job as an entrepreneur is to put all of that together and really try and first, as you quoted me, pin it. So find that target group of customers that really has this. So like I said, great entry market is people who have a problem, know they have a problem, they've tried to solve it. Try your solution with them first. If it works, if it solves the problem, your first conversation with your customer should never be, I'm trying to sell a product, but it should be, I'm trying to get an understanding of your needs. Wow. Right? And once you go back to the drawing board and you come up with a solution or a product or a service, you go back to them and you ask 3 questions. 2 questions you ask your customer, 1 question you ask yourself. The 2 questions you ask your customer are, does this initial product with this feature set satisfy your needs? Second question is, do you love it?
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And the third question is the one that you ask yourself, which is, can we scale it? You probably heard the term minimally viable product, MVP.
Yeah. Oh,
I actually like to
MVP.
use short. I like to take it one step further. I like to refer to it as the MLP, minimally lovable product. Because if a customer doesn't love your product, they're not going to go out of their way to implement it. If it's enterprise, scale it across the enterprise.
What about POC, Professor? I mean, if MVP has MLP, then what does POC have?
I mean, sometimes it's different ways of describing the same.
Lovable POC?
Perhaps. But remember, sometimes your biggest competitor is non-consumption, which means not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
Or just doing, or status quo, which means doing the same thing. So whatever you create has to represent meaningful, tangible value that goes above and beyond. Once you've nailed it with one, once you've pinned it with one group of customer, and you can meaningfully, you can conclude that this meaningfully improves their lives or their way of working. That's when you start thinking about, all right, well, how do we expand this? How do we scale this? And then we think of, can we do this sustainably and profitably?
I think everything we talk about eventually boils down to human-centeredness and thinking. Anyways, I want to take a step away from our discussion and move on to this new segment this segment that we've been implementing, which is chai time. So please join us as we have a cup of chai. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions. So you were here obviously as a graduate student, so you didn't have the undergraduate experience, but you were here in 2008. I want to hear, what are some experiences as a graduate student on the campus that may be different then from now?
It's a great question. I mean, you're basically making me go back into ancient history. Yeah.
Come on, Hamzah. It's only 2009.
Well, first of all, dinosaurs used to roam Hope Street.
Okay. Oh, really?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. We had
what
some
kind of dinosaurs? I'm interested in that.
Velociraptor would just be just walking around.
What about T-Rex?
Yeah, no, that was in Cambridge, right, at the Harvard campus.
Gotcha.
I mean, look, here's what I'd say. The student experience has changed, but it is still very much the same. I think Brown as an institution sort of prides itself on the fact that our students are the happiest.
Yes, sir.
At least they were back in 2008 when I first came here, and maybe that metric has changed. But I would say that Brown students would generally agree that they are happy.
100%.
I can say that. Maybe.
And that extends graduate, undergraduate, and there's a reason for that, because I think that the institution has created mechanisms that sort of allow students to be express themselves individually whilst being sort of a part of this wider organization. Brown allows you to be yourself. Brown allows you to be who you are, whether you're a freshman that's coming straight from high school, or a PhD student that's relocated here from overseas. And I think that aspect of the experience is integral. That has stayed, and that is very much true to our core as people. That, and by the way, I would say that ethos stretches, extends certainly beyond students to alumni as well. So, and that's why we have such a close-knit alumni community, because we have shared values, and those values were molded and shaped by this institution. Whether you spend 1 year here or 4, your experience generally tends to be similar in that sense.
That's beautiful.
Now, what has changed? Well, Fair Street has changed.
Oh yeah, and also one more thing. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Professor. You're talking
please.
about many good things, right? But since we're like having chai, were there any good chai places at that time on campus? Because now we do.
Well, this cafe did not exist then.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you that.
So how could so that means life is more cooler now.
Yeah, 100% cooler. I mean, I'll say graduate students generally used to congregate at the graduate center lounge, the graduate center bar. That still is the case.
Well, the GCB still was a thing.
It still was this. It was still a thing. It still is a thing. It looks exactly the same. It hasn't changed. Social experiences generally tend to have been pretty similar. And again, brown students generally tend to, we have this work hard, party hard culture that hasn't
Wait a minute,
changed.
work hard, party harder.
Yes.
You have to add it.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's still, that's still there. So, kebab and curry was a thing then. Kebab and curry is a thing now.
Shout out to kebab.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chef Sanjeev, the Shake Shack and the Nelson Entrepreneurship Center did not exist.
Yeah.
Or as Daniel Warsha would like to call it, the Entrepreneurship Center that's right above a Shake Shack. They did not exist, but I'm really happy to see that. So programmatically, we've improved our offerings. Resources for student entrepreneurs have increased manifold since then. And that's not because the university just went out and did it. That's because students asked for it.
Yeah.
And again, the university, the institution is also entrepreneurial because, a lot of these offerings addressed needs that the students identified, and they kept evolving, and the outcome is in sort of the sheer volume of program, curricular, and extracurricular programs that we have now. So once again, that was the long answer to your very short question.
No, thank you.
What has changed? Nothing but everything.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's what makes, what you touched on earlier about brown students, what makes them so special. They're not just problem solvers, they're problem identifiers.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they've been able to do, pushing the entrepreneurial demand has been, you've seen it change a lot. So thank you. Do you have any more personal questions for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, could you tell us more about a memory that you still remember about like from your student life at Brown or maybe at King's College, anywhere?
I guess my favorite memories, honestly, one of the things that you get to experience here is engaging with people from very different and diverse environments and backgrounds. And again, I talked earlier about how British education is very focused. So you start by studying engineering, you graduate with engineering. At a place like here, you have folks that, especially a graduate program, you have folks in your class that are engineers that have undergraduate backgrounds in economics and biology and the humanities. For me, it's always very enriching interacting and engaging with humanities, scholars of the humanities, because, the humanities teach you to solve problems in a way that engineering never does. Please, I know we're right next to a school of engineering, but in my experience, people that come from liberal arts and humanities backgrounds generally tend to be great problem solvers, and they ask great questions. And again, that's why our entrepreneurship ethos is rooted in the liberal arts at Brown. So I guess for me, great memories would be sort of just being able to engage with such people constantly being intellectually stimulated, that certainly is a hallmark of a Brown education, and to me that was fun. I was involved with the PSAP, the Pakistani Students Association.
Yeah.
Shout out to PSAP.
I think I probably helped him write the Constitution, which probably still exists. So
Interesting. It does still exist, I
so-
can tell you.
and I think, I mean, I guess everything that I've just said can be summed up with one word, and that is community. And I think that's something that, you know, all of us at Brown are proud that we're a part of, and we're there to support each other, we're there to guide each other, we're there to challenge each other, and we're there to uplift each other.
And we're there to inspire each other as well.
Absolutely.
That's a huge thing. And like about the community, you spoke about the diversity. I think with the diversity comes inclusivity as well. And that is exactly what makes Brown so unique, and what makes the college experience so precious as well. And this is what we believe in. Like even in Digital Leap, we like coming out with this chai thing, and like the geographic.
It's delicious, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank
yeah.
you, Danish.
Thank you, Danish. Thank you so much. So yeah, I really do believe that diversity is what makes the college experience really precious and really enriching.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, those are, Brown students have a degree of humility to them that you generally don't find elsewhere. And some say it's because we attract students that are like that. Some say it's because of the culture that we have on this campus that instills a certain degree of humility in the students. I don't know what the right answer is, but what I can tell you is that that's what makes our community so unique.
Interesting.
It's just a magical place, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yes. So Professor, you spoke about how like students who are coming from liberal arts, they're usually good at need identification and then need solving as well. They're good with empathy, and then with ideating based on that empathy, and then bringing that value into the end user experience. Could you like tell us more about the tech that is being involved now in everything? Because to be very honest, if we do know you have a huge background in the startup landscape as well. You've mentored more than like around 150 plus or like 200 plus, 250 plus startups. So that's a huge number. You're like almost a guru. In fact, are a guru in the startup landscape. Yeah. So about this, I had a question that since we know that most of the startups are digital natives, right? Because we have digitally interdependent realities now. They would all need a digital infrastructure. So how important is it for an entrepreneur to give considerations and to understand the scope of technology when they're launching their venture or when they're doing their preneur?
That's a great question. And, if I look at my peers, I've had the distinctive opportunity to engage with some incredible change makers, some very successful entrepreneurs. Some of them came from technical backgrounds, some did not. I would say it's been a fairly even mix. But I would say that the one thing, again, going back to one thread that joined them together was this ability to solve problems. I'm going to answer your question two ways, Omer. The first is I'm going to go back to the question about sort of liberal arts versus engineering, and both the liberal arts and sort of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, students that are trained in either of these disciplines tend to approach problem solving in different, sometimes distinctive ways. What do I mean by that? Folks that have a STEM background generally tend to look at problems mathematically or from an engineering perspective. They'll look at a problem, they'll break it down into its constituent parts, they'll solve each part individually, and then they'll put together a solution, right? Humanities majors, so these are folks that come from, that study philosophy, English, history, art, architecture. They generally tend to approach problem solving in a different way. And I don't by any means try to generalize, but just based off my own experience. Humanities majors generally try to solve problems by asking questions, right? And sometimes if they're not able to solve, a problem, they'll go back and they'll ask a different question. And that generally, in my opinion, in my experience, is yet another complementary approach to solving problems. Now, what does that mean for a startup company? You need both approaches. So the most diverse, you talked about diversity, equity, and inclusivity. We need all of these skills represented for a venture to be successful. I mean, there's a cliche, I'll probably get this wrong, but the three types of people that make a startup success: hipster, hustler, and hacker.
Yes, sir.
So the hacker is the tech person, and the hipster and the hustler one probably comes from a social sciences, and one probably comes from a
Adding
liberal
that
arts.
Steve Jobs to it.
Yeah, humanities background. But yes, I mean, Steve Jobs at his core was an artist.
Oh yes, I agree.
Right? He wasn't an engineer. I mean, he probably was qualified as one, but he was an artist. And so as you think of problem solving in the humanities is a great place to learn how to solve problems and how to ask questions. And sometimes, if you can't answer a question, humanities majors will go back and reframe the question. So I think that's important. Specifically talking about tech skills, look, it's important to have an understanding of the tech stack. That's at the core of your product. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know the meaning of every single line of code. That doesn't mean if you have a million line of codes, doesn't mean that you necessarily need to know what each line is, as long as you know what it can do, what it can achieve, and you don't need a CS degree to do that. So yeah, I mean, certainly tech knowledge is important. But now if you look at the sort of high prevalence of AI-based tools, big data. I mean, there's a lot you can do on the tech front without actually being a CS major.
100%. And I believe that is the beauty of digital transformations, that they're all around us. I mean, right before this interview, we were interviewing Heidi Messer, right? Who is a huge founder, and we were interviewing her on Zoom, right? So that is only possible through technology. And the thing is that technology is now so human-centric, is so around us that it feels almost like palpable, almost tangible, right? And that's the beauty of technology, that it's related and it's relevant to each and every industry, whether you be coming from real estate or like healthcare. Even the startup that you started was health tech startup, right? So I think now every business needs to have that digital presence around them in order to further bolster their credibility, to get their message out there. And for that, I guess, as Professor very rightly mentioned, that they need to have a very decent idea of technology. Very decent idea.
Yeah.
And I'll just caveat that I've been involved with a few tech businesses. I don't write code. And not because I don't think it's important, but because for me, that wasn't my core competency personally. That wasn't my skill set. But what I can do is I can translate that code into something that
Beautiful.
That can be used to create an impact.
You also briefly spoke about the values that we usually look in entrepreneurs, right? So could you personally tell us what's the most important value in an entrepreneur? Because you have a lot of experience in the incubator region as well, in the incubator in the incubator landscape too. So what is the main core thing that you look in an entrepreneur and then in an incubator when you're analyzing different incubators and entrepreneurs?
Well, I mean, the first answer is the easy one. What do I look for in an entrepreneur? What do I think makes an entrepreneur successful? Intellectual humility and curiosity, right? I think
Could you describe that?
So again, it goes back to having the skills to actually create empathy and understanding your customer without being in a position of judgment. So what I talked about earlier, be an ally, not a hero. I think that stems from sort of intellectual humility. Curiosity, always try to learn, right? And to me, an entrepreneur really is a knowledge seeker. So I think that's important. Have and approach it from a degree of humility. So to me that's important. I mean, I'm talking about incubators. Brown has a technology accelerator program called B-Lab, and I was the director of B-Lab over the summer, as you mentioned in your kind introduction earlier. And once again, I was incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by entrepreneurs that possessed those skills. And what makes a good accelerator or an incubator? Well, certainly the ability to, I think the ability to support these entrepreneurs in the best way possible, but also nurture their individuality. And I think that's important.
Yeah, thank you. I want to leave this as the final question, because if I don't say that, then we're going to just keep on asking more and more questions. So what's the most critical lesson you've learned on your entrepreneurial journey that you would like to share with our audience, especially those looking to take their own digital leap into the world of technopreneurship?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say find your passion, right? Find your passion. Most importantly, chart your own course. Nobody knows you better than you. So find what it is that you're good at. And I think it's a myth that you're supposed to do that whilst you're in school. Oh my God, I'm graduating, I haven't found my passion, I failed. No. Passion, you spend an entire life discovering yourself and discovering your passions. And pursue a career, whether it's an entrepreneurial venture or anything else in that space. So find that passion, and whether it's writing code, selling product, certain industries, clean tech, healthcare, AI, blockchain, wherever it is, find what makes you tick, and build your career, build your, we went in an age where human beings we can continue being productive well into our 80s. You guys are in your 20s. You've got a lot of years to figure this out. So find your passion and take as long as you need to do that, and then stick with it.
Wow. Yeah. On that note, I'd love to end. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you so much, guys. This was fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much. I'm Faizaan, joined by co-host Omer Chaudhry. And listeners, stay tuned for next week as we continue to discuss digital technology. Thank you.